Are we recording?
Yep.
Oh, okay. All right. So, welcome back. Welcome back to the Unfriendly Black Hotties, the podcast where we don't apologize for taking up space, speaking our truth, or getting a little nasty. Let's get down to the nitty gritty with our favorite black femmes that have too much to say and zero time for respectability politics. Around here, we're soft and sharp, hot and unfriendly, depending on the day. And today we're discussing the elephant in the room, parasocial relationships. This might seem like a buzzword at this point or like something that has been normalized, but the hotties would like to talk you through what it actually is and how we can combat that. Let's get into it, but before we do, let's meet today's hotties. I am Doc Dubs, back again after a couple weeks away.
We missed you.
Thank you.
Welcome back. I'm Summer, and I'm tired of this heat.
Well, that is an unfortunate name. I am Instagram's friend or foe, Trisha Cheeks. I too am tired of this heat. I'm just glad our people are tropical people.
Yes.
You keep saying that.
Look, it was 108 here last week, so I am happy that it broke
Excuse
just a
me?
little bit. Yeah, it hit 108 here.
Climate change, climate
Yep,
change.
yep. You could actually see the heat in the air, so I'm happy that it broke yesterday, but I know it's gonna go right back up tomorrow. So I'm not, counting my chickens just yet.
More than one reason to stay hydrated, friends.
Yes, absolutely.
This
Drinking
heat
water,
is a
people.
killer. This heat is a killer. If you're on the eastern seaboard or just anything north of the equator right now, stay hydrated, man. Don't go outside if you don't have to. And if you got older folks in your life, check on them and make sure their ACs work.
Please, because there's no time for a broken AC in this heat.
None.
The more you know. Dun, 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 dun.
All right, so shall we get into it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Alrighty. So today, like I said, we'd like to discuss parasocial relationships with everyone. Um, for today, in this discussion, we wanted to make sure that we were handling this topic with care, and we purposefully chose our segments for today to make everyone feel as comfortable as possible, but also call everybody into the room who has either witnessed someone experience a parasocial relationship or has experienced one themselves. Um, and instead of centering mental health in this aspect, we'd like to talk more about attachment and attachment styles and the different types of parasocial relationships that exist. Because what we've seen online when this is discussed is a very much broad stroked form of what it is, and that's it. There's very little that's given to us to dive deeper into it to figure out why it is that someone might be experiencing this or why you yourself might be experiencing it. So we just wanted to make sure that we are approaching the subject with care, but also making sure that we aren't sugarcoating it because there are topics in this world that should not be made to be palatable, in my opinion.
Absolutely, I agree. I think that people should get comfortable, even if I understand it's hard, especially because it requires you to look deeper into yourself and actually reflect on some of the things um, that you like your behavior online and how you interact with other people. But I think it's very important, especially in this space, to have these conversations because it really helps in the long run.
Yeah.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I think both of you said it well. And I do want to preface that, we are not medical professionals. So I think that's why we're also choosing to approach it as with this attachment style in mind. I think Doc Dubs is very thoughtful about that. So I want to make sure that the listeners know we're not medical professionals. We will have some resources up on the Substack and on our Instagram at WBQC later this week. But take everything we're saying the way you want to, but we just want to make sure we say we're not doctors.
Yes. Don't come around here with no lawsuits. I'm not a
Yeah.
psychologist.
Yeah, we're not responsible. We
We
just
do
we just are
research.
nerds. We're
Yeah.
nerds, and we researched this very heavily and talked about it from all angles.
Yes. All right, so let's get into it. So, what is a parasocial relationship or a parasocial interaction? So, according to Merriam Webster, a parasocial interaction or PSI is a semblance of an interpersonal exchange in which members of an audience come to feel like they know a performer that they encounter in mass media, whether that be movies, television, social media apps, um, authors, voice actors, whatever medium it is that you're consuming. Over time, parasocial interactions with performers may lead to an audience member developing a one sided sense of connection, which creates the parasocial relationship. In that, there can be different types of parasocial relationships. There's three: entertainment parasocial relationship. These relationships are interactions that are lighthearted and involve a sense of entertainment. So, say you've bonded over a particular artist that you like with someone else. That bond made between you and that person via that artist is technically considered a parasocial relationship. However, it does not fall underneath the one sided interaction. The second is intense, which is this relationship involves a deeper attachment and may start to feel like you have a real life connection to this person or group that you I'm just going to say admire for lack of a better word there. The third and final is borderline. Borderline is your most extreme case and can involve progressive behaviors such as stalking, in some cases violence, or interactions online where you're immediately defending this person's actions or who they are as a person. And that one, I feel like you can put stand culture right in between intense and borderline. If y'all disagree with me, you can definitely disagree with me on that. But I feel like stand culture falls right in between intense and borderline, but it can go over that line into more um, reaching for a person and actually physically trying to find them where they are.
No, I agree. I think if it's scientifically defined that way as one of the levels, then that's the definition.
Yeah. All right. So, getting deeper into these topics today, we're going to go into our experience with or witnessing parasocial relationships, how attachment styles, might affect potential parasocial relationships and loneliness, and if you want to, how to break up in a parasocial relationship. So, getting into that first segment, we'll start with our experiences with or witnessing parasocial relationships. For me personally, I have never experienced a parasocial relationship. I think I can be a fan of something or someone, but I've never been able to go beyond the point of fanning into standing or obsession. Again, obsession, lack of a better term. I couldn't figure out another word to say there. But for me, I don't know if it's because I inherently see a person who's creating work that I enjoy as a person outside of their art, or if it's just maybe my brain isn't set up in a way that allows me to attach very much to something that is I feel or perceive to feel is further away from me. Like I love Prince, but Prince is so far beyond me that I wouldn't be able to attach myself to him to be like I know all of these things about him. Or like um in the early 2000s when I loved B2K, yes, I love them, and yes, their posters were on my wall, but could I tell you a single thing about those men, those boys?
Mm.
No. Did I cry when they broke up and everybody was upset watching 106 in Park as they sat there on that couch? No, I had friends that did. but it didn't hit me that hard. I was just like, oh, hopefully this is a good thing for them. And come to find out, it actually was, because some of the stuff that happened in that group and with that company that they were with was outlandish. But it never hit me to emotionally connect any deeper beyond the work that they created.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't think I've ever experienced a parasocial relationship, but I will say that particularly when I was younger, I was a fan of certain mediums, whether it was a show or a particular author. Like I felt strongly about certain things when I was younger, and but it never got to the point where I felt like I knew that person or I knew that author or like I definitely think that there are levels to it. Like it's okay to feel strongly about something, but there is a line and you have
Hmm.
to always be cognizant of that line. Um like I understand like even when you're younger, you might not necessarily be aware of the line because you're still learning how to be a human being.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
and you're still learning about boundaries. You're still learning, that just because you like this person doesn't mean you know them. Um,
Yeah.
but I think as I've gotten older, like I'm still a fan of a lot of um actors and musicians and things like that. But now that I'm older, I can kind of discern, like, okay, I'm a fan of their work, not necessarily them as
Hmm.
people, because I don't know them as people. Um, and then something I think that I've also learned as I've gotten older is that I want to be make sure that I'm treating people the way that I would want to be treated. And so I
Yeah.
think that's what has kept me from going over into that parasocial relationship territory. Because if somebody was trying to like if I just think about if I was in that position and I was well known and there were people, who were, for lack of a better word, obsessed with me, I would feel very uncomfortable about that. Um, and so I definitely think that just taking accountability for your how you present yourself online and then how you interact with other people is very important because sometimes you do have to check yourself like wait a minute, I don't know these people, I got to calm down.
Hmm.
And having that self-awareness, especially as I've gotten older, has served me really well.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think my experiences with it are different. I think I've hovered right at that line. Like when I was a preteen, I think I also get these hyper fixations because it's because
Hmm.
I'm neurodivergent. But for me, I do get these hyper fixations on things, and that might cling to pop culture related things. I did want to be an MTV VJ when I was growing up. So I think that also helped me like justify why I was like so obsessive about learning facts or even in my time in sports learning stats. But I do always attach those things to whomever drew me to that particular thing. Like for baseball, it was the Braves. So that kind of thing. But
Hmm.
even as a teenager, I was, the typical fixated boy crazy teenage girl where I just kind of wrote the fan fiction and just let my imagination do its thing. I never wanted to project that out in the real world. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So if I think Summer's right. Like there is a line.
Hmm.
um I think I was definitely on that fanatic boy crazy line, and probably still am, quite honestly. um because I still have those certain types of fandoms that like I'm a very respectful, dedicated fan, but I don't think I know these people. To Summer's
Mm-hmm.
point, like I'm
Yeah.
a fan of what they do in the entertainment venue that they are performing it in. So I definitely think that's the line. I'm not gonna run up on them in an airport. You feel
Yeah.
me? So that's my take. But I love the way y'all explained it because I think it definitely starts with, your mentality when you're younger and how you kind of attach to things then.
Yeah, because I think when you're younger, you're finding the things that you actually like beyond what your family or your friends have introduced you to. So, like, of course, I didn't introduce myself to Prince. My mom did, or my band teacher did. Well, they technically both did at the same time because they loved that band. But me finding artists that I liked, that I wanted to put that type of time and energy into, to like get to know their music. And of course, like in the 2000s, you still had CDs, so I could like read the
Hmm.
CD jacket and get all of the lyrics.
R.I.P. the Walkman, Discman, dude.
Yeah.
Listen,
Also, I love that you are also a Prince kid because I'm definitely a Prince kid.
oh yeah, and
Love that.
and even with because like I was obsessed with New Music Tuesday, the day itself. New music no longer comes out on Tuesday; it comes out on Friday. But
Or
new
whenever the
music,
artist just wants to drop it.
Shout
exactly,
out to
and
Beyonce.
Yeah, yeah, she did that too.
100%.
Shout out to Beyonce.
Because it was like this really fun thing that like on Tuesday I could convince my mom to let us go to the mall and my brother would go do whatever video game stuff and I'd be stuck in Sam Goody or FYE just standing there looking at all this new music and picking the one CD that I could get so that way I could
Mm.
get
Uh,
all of the information on the lyrics and all of the information on the inspiration behind the album and maybe it was a special edition that came with a poster I could put on my wall. Like I had a
the
giant
good
Aaliyah
old
poster
days. Uh,
and a giant Aaliyah poster. And because I just thought her voice was really beautiful and the way that she sang was beautiful and the work she did with Missy was amazing. So to me, when I connected and made those relationships and found things of my own that I liked, it was more to find other people in that same space that I would also like. So Missy connects me to Aaliyah. Aaliyah connects me to Timberland. That connects me to Magoo. And like getting into all of the little pockets that you can find these amazing people and artists. But it never reached a point where it crossed a line or or it felt like I was jumping to defend or protect this person I never met in my life and I would probably never meet in my life. So it always stayed with like, I like what they do. They seem like good people. If I find out they're not good people, I can easily separate myself.
right,
Right.
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 Yeah, there's got to be a hard line on that. Like,
Hmm.
are they living in a way that you wouldn't live? Like, none of us are living 100% right, right?
Hmm.
But if they're out here kicking puppies, I don't want to fuck with that guy or gal or
Right.
person. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to fuck with them.
And
Yeah.
I also think that with these parasocial relationships, when people are so enamored by someone that they're willing to defend them, I think in that they lose a part of themselves because you end up defending things that you probably wouldn't defend if a friend or a neighbor did it. But for
Hmm.
some reason, this person that you are a fan of, they can do no wrong, even when they do wrong. And we see that a lot in fan spaces. It's like a person will say something racist, or they'll be a misogynist, or abusive, and
Hmm.
all of a sudden you have people who are fans of them and they don't know them personally, but they're running to their defense, where if I'm sure in real life, I mean, 9 times out of 10 maybe not, but in real life, they might not be they might not defend a person that they know as heavily as they defend somebody that they don't know, just because they like their work and they think that they like them as people.
So do you think it's possible, since you brought this up, do you think it's possible to separate the art from the artist? And the reason I ask is because there, in this particular space of like books and audio erotica, there's a lot of people that might create good work. They have a presence, they have a fan base, but they have either done, said, liked, retweeted, or I don't know what you call it at this point. I don't know. I'm not on X or Twitter or whatever it is now. Or they've participated in something that goes against you as a person or your morals. Do you think it's possible to separate the work that they created that you may have once liked from them as a person?
No,
No,
absolutely not.
Yeah.
nah. If you do nefarious things in real life, you did nefarious things to get to the point where you perform that art. I'm not fucking with you after that.
Hmm.
And I
But
think
that,
I've
oh
had
no, go
this
ahead.
conversation I've had this conversation with people about art before, and there are some people who think that once an artist puts out their work, that work no longer belongs to them. That it belongs to, you know, the people who are going to consume it, the people who, you know, are going to read whatever they wrote or listen to whatever music they put out. And to some extent, I think there's some truth to that, but I also think
Hmm.
that art is always going to be an extension of the artist. And
Yeah.
so if I find out that a person is, you know, a Trump supporter, I'm that's going to impact how, if I were to continue to listen to their work or read their work, that's going to color the lens in which I perceive the things that they put out. Because it's no
Hmm.
longer like, oh, this person is an artist. It's a, oh, this person, you know, voted against my rights. This person must not
Absolutely.
like women.
Hmm.
This person must, you know, be a white supremacist, or at the very least an agent of white supremacy. So that I can't take that out of the equation just
Hmm.
because I once liked their work. I wouldn't go against myself in that way.
Yeah, because
Right.
you can't tell me that it doesn't seep into their work. And then once
Absolutely.
you realize that, you look back at the work and you're like, oh, like you'll find a quote from a book, or you'll find a lyric in a song, or you'll find something in an audio where you're like, that's not what I read or heard initially, because that glass is broken, that veil has been lifted, and now you're looking at it through a different lens of this person because you've learned something that you either didn't want to learn, or you just happen to learn it, and you're just like, oh, okay, so you and your work can stay over there. I will be officially like clearing my playlist or my bookshelf of your work, and that is it. You've gotten whatever you've gotten from me, the views, the dollars, the likes or whatever, but from this point is where that stops. And I think in parasocial relationships or interactions, we end up with people who just want escapism,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to escape into the work and not think about the person that made the work. But then they'll turn around to defend the person who made the work when someone doesn't like the work. And it's like this weird coin flip of a situation where it's like, because you like this person, I can't say anything at all in any form
Right.
whatsoever.
Right.
So I have to delicately walk this line of trying to figure out, am I the only one that feels this way, without setting someone else off who presents themselves as uh, a hero, or a, again, can't remember, think of a word here, but savior of this person who they don't know, because
Yes.
they're trying to save them from seeing something or reading something or being exposed to something, when that person couldn't give two two 2 cents of nothing
Mm-hmm.
about what is happening in fan spaces. So it it baffles my mind that a lot of people will immediately say, I just want the escapism. That's fine. You can want the escapism all you want, but just know that the person you're escaping to could possibly be against you and do harm to you. It's also possible that someone doesn't like the same person you like in the way that you like them. It might
Right.
not impact them in the way that it impacts you, and that's okay. That is the part that I want people to understand. Instead of saying your emotions are valid for attaching your feelings to this person and their work, I want you to understand that it's okay for someone else not to like the thing that you like and the way that you like it.
I think it's also, just to that point of validation. I think at some level as humans, we are always going to seek out validation, and we're always to some extent going to want it. But at a certain, there comes a point where wanting your feelings to be validated is not, the end all be all. There has to be what's the word I'm looking for? There has to be a line. There just
Hmm.
has to be a point where you're saying, okay, I feel this way, but but maybe, that's not as important as the harm that this person that I like is causing. It's not,
Hmm.
Yeah,
if
I feel
if
like
that makes sense.
that totally makes sense. And the question I have now is, when do you set those boundaries for yourself? Because it seems like a very internal proposition to know, like, this is my hard cutoff line for something. I think a lot of us, to what we just spoke to, say that, okay, this is our hard cutoff. If they do this and this and this and this, I'm out. They're not getting any more of my dollars. What they got is what they got. And I'm not supporting this motherfucker anymore.
Mm.
What does it take to internally uh, make that boundary for yourself? When is enough enough? When should is there something people can check into to know, okay, this is getting too far for me?
I think people have to be honest with themselves. I think that's where it
Hmm.
starts. Because, for example, I think of people who like Harry Potter, and I loved Harry Potter when I was a kid. I have all the movies. I didn't read the books or anything, but I love those movies. But for me, I know who I am as a person. I won't, dare to call myself an ally, but I know for a fact that I believe that trans people are, human beings, that they deserve rights, that they deserve respect. And so to see somebody, come out and, be as vitriolic and uh, transphobic as J.K. Rowling is, that's a hard, I know that's a hard line for me. I can't say
Hmm.
that I support trans people and see the humanity in them, and then turn around and still, buy Harry Potter merch or talk about Harry Potter online. Like, people don't have to go back and burn all the movies that they bought or burn the books or the merch that they
Right.
already have. But it's the continued support for somebody, and then for them to come out and still say, oh, I support my trans friends, or oh, I love, you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
feel like people are not being honest with themselves. I feel like and once you figure out, like, hey, what do I actually believe? Do I believe in
Hmm.
my heart of hearts that this community, you know, is is valid, that they deserve support, that, am I against white supremacy? Am I against misogyny? As soon as you sit down and you think about those things, then it becomes clear to you what your line is.
Yeah. And I think,
And so I think people should start there.
yeah, I think a lot of people look at someone else's dissent from the norm of the fan base as shaming or not being nice or um, just out and out disrespect of the fan base or the person in general. But when you frame it like that, you need to think of, like, why do I feel like this is disrespectful to me when this person's only sharing their opinion? Like, we're supposed to be able to, in fan bases and fandoms, communicate openly, because there's plenty of times where I've recommended books to you all where I really enjoyed it, and then um Summer, I think you said you didn't like the particular style that the person wrote in, and I didn't take that as an offense to heart because I didn't write the work, she did. And
Hmm.
it wasn't a slight against me that you didn't like it. It's just I now know not to recommend something to you where I think you said it was like telling and not showing or something like that. So
Hmm.
I now know not to recommend that writing style to you. But I think what happens is people don't want to be possibly openly honest with themselves about, yes, this audio made you feel a way, you've discovered things about yourself by listening to it, this book made you realize something that you might not have thought about before, or This author could be your fave of all faves, but if their work isn't for somebody else, that doesn't do harm to you. You can still consume it. But if you can still continue to consume work of someone who is very blatantly, very openly, very loudly being harmful, then I have to call you into the room and say, like, look, you can still be a fan of this person. That's your business, but just know that I will be taking a step away. But I
Mm-hmm.
think what needs to also happen in that same breath is we always look at like the very loud um, critique, the very loud disruptors, the very loud people who are very blatantly doing awful things. But there's the other people that say it quietly and they get swept under the rug, or
Mm-hmm.
someone else defends them so loudly that they're just like, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. A bunch of us agreed that it wasn't that big of a deal, and you're just, in your feelings. And then people start to tone police someone about how they feel about an author or an audio, and when we fall into that category, we continue to sweep under the rug small things that this person is doing. And then that little mound becomes larger and larger and larger because you skipped or chose to put blinders on and not look at it because you want to stay in this creator's good graces. But all you're doing is putting more money into the hands, into the pockets of someone who wouldn't look in your direction if it was raining to hand you an umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
You are putting that person above you. And once you realize you've put that person above you and your existence and your friends, that's when you start to break that glass and realize, oh, okay, there's something that I've been attaching myself to that doesn't feel good, or it felt good once, and now for some reason it's not feeling as good as it used to. Why is that? So once you recognize those boundaries, and once you've realized I've put this person so far above me and above all others, why did I put that one person up there? What was the reason for that? Why am I still attached and connected? What is it that they gave me once that I can either source from somewhere else, or I can decide that what I got was enough and walk away?
That's a really tight response. I like both of those answers. Brilliantly said.
Like, because it
Yeah.
it comes up frequently because it's this, especially in the world of audio erotica, is because it's a very intimate thing, and I think a lot of people that consume it more frequently than I do, even though I've been listening to it for like 5 or so years, like I don't listen with like veracity. I listen when I want to. It's not more. I don't fall into like the. I don't know if I did previously, or I know that I don't now, but I can't recall a time where I fell so heavily into the drop day excitement because of one person. Because I listen to multiple people, but even then, there's days where I'm just like, nothing's popping out to me, even if somebody I liked put out an audio. So, and this is why I said at the beginning that I can be a fan of someone, but I can't be a stan of someone. Like, I can
Yeah.
be a fan of their work and I can see them upload, like, oh, that's great. I'm glad that they got the numbers and people are liking it. But if that day I'm not feeling it, and there's plenty of audios where I've just never, they've put them out and I've never gone to listen to them. And then one day randomly they put out an audio and I listen. So I think when someone is all consumed with one person, that makes it a bit harder to remove yourself from a perceived interpersonal relationship because you consume such intimate work.
Yeah. And I think this is when I started to kind of fall out with a certain pink app who's having their demise on TikTok as we speak. Um, I'm petty like that. Hallelujah. I need to shout that up one for later. Yeah. So when I started to figure out I didn't want to know these people anymore, that my hard line to becoming too attached was like, I don't want to know personal shit. I'm thinking of these people as actors. You know what I'm saying? I think this is their work, this is their job. I'm a fan of the art. I'm a fan of the work. I don't want to see their, I don't want to know all these little gripping details. I think
Mm,
people do find themselves attaching themselves to those little gripping details. And that's the thing that I guess bothers me the most, because these are still people working. These are still actual people, and they don't want, you know, unwanted attachments to them either. They just want to do their job.
right.
It's probably
Yeah.
very much the same way with like any artist or musician, or someone that has stalkers or gets doxxed or anything, because we've seen that happen to VAs as well. But um I would think it's very scary um to have people latch on to you like that and not know how to handle it, and then to handle it poorly,
Mhm.
and the optics be bad in it,
Hmm.
Yeah.
or to handle it poorly after someone says, hey, this bothered me, I want to bring this to your attention. That means you're not shit. That means my support is immediately cut off. If they've got
Mhm.
receipts too, fuck you, dude.
Yep. Yeah, I agree 100% with that, because we tend to think that a person who they'll say like, "Oh, I've got receipts, I've got this, I've got that," and then that'll get dismissed because people will be like, "Well, how do you know that they don't have receipts when you're doing this, or that they?" So it gives you this weird like warped pushback on, yes, this happened to me, but it didn't happen to me, so I don't know why you're so upset. Just because it didn't happen to you doesn't mean that it didn't happen. And I think that's what we're seeing right now with the TikTok, because it happened to her and she has proof that it happened. So it's not like she's making these things up. It's not in her mind. It's not something that was a perceived slight that she then asked a bunch of friends to be like, "Hey, could you tell me if I'm tripping on this or not?" It
Hmm.
was something that happened to her in real time, and she was sharing what happened to her in real time. And then people went and told her she made it up. She's wrong. She's lying. This isn't the way you get the attention. You're doing this for clout. You're doing this for this. Ain't none of these people big enough for me to do nothing for clout.
Meanwhile, there are other performative people doing things for clout that y'all don't want to call out because you agree
Mm.
with their
Hmm.
sentiment. So
Exactly.
I also feel like this is a time to call out. I mean, is it fair? And tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me, is it fair to call folks who continue to champion this type of behavior just because they like a person's work enablers?
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
of course.
Because I don't want to name call people, but I also just want to say that it is okay to say, hey, I love your work, but what you're doing and saying is some fuck shit.
Hmm.
I want people to be like, that is okay. It is okay to criticize someone you're a fan of. Like
I
it,
think.
and not be, criticism is fine. You have to take it as feedback, and feedback is a gift to
Hmm.
me.
And I think if you really care about somebody, you won't just tell them what they want to hear. You'll be honest with them.
Right.
And I also think that when people form these type of parasocial relationships with a particular creator, artist, or what have you, they see that person as an extension of themselves. Like the reason why they connected with them is because they see something in them that they can relate to, or that they like, or that they aspire to. And so I think when people critique that person, they think, oh, they're talking about me, because they take it very personally when you are criticizing someone that they like. And the only way that I can rationalize that type of visceral reaction to something that has nothing to do with them is if they think that it does have something to do with them.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I just wish people would do more self reflection because
People love
I
to
think,
say they're self reflecting and then reflect on absolutely nothing but their hurt feelings. This is one
mm,
of them, what my mama would call, what Mama Cheeks would call one of them hit dog with holler situations
mm-hmm,
where
Yeah.
they see a little truth in the critique and they are automatically defensive for themselves because, again, that fandom also goes inward. They take it as a personal affront. We're
Mhm.
not attacking you, boo boo.
no.
We're all listening to
Yeah.
the same person, and this is how I saw the art,
Yeah.
Like, unless you're on the payroll, it should never be that
right?
deep for you to get upset.
Unless he's
Like,
paying your light bill, it's not that deep.
I'm a huge fan of Beyonce. I've been a fan of Beyonce for years. But people talk about her all the time. I'm not going to get online and defend her honor. That woman's a billionaire. She
Mhm.
can buy my life like 10,000 times over.
Correct.
I'm not. I don't get paid to defend her. I'm not going to do that.
I mean, I'm a member of the beehive, but I'm a little honeybee. I'm not attending to the queen. I respect her hustle.
Mhm.
And I love the babies, but and I'm trying to get fit for Cowboy Carter because I was tired at Renaissance. So, I agree with you, Summer. I agree, per usual.
Yeah. All right. So we've said the word attachment like 1,000 times, um, and I want to get into the next segment of attachment styles and what that could mean for potential parasocial relationships. So let me make sure I'm looking at the right page here. So attachment styles. There's 4 different types. Um, they are secure attachment, anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, and disorganized attachment. Now, secure attachment is when, where is it? There we go. Secure attachment is where most people would put themselves, right? You feel confident in the attachment you have to those around you. You are securely attached to, whether you're a mom and a child, your baby is securely attached to you. You can leave them with someone and they'll feel fine. They're physically and emotionally attached to you, but they aren't anxious when you leave. An anxious attachment is also known as a preoccupied attachment or anxious ambivalent attachment. And this is coming straight from the Cleveland Clinic, not from my mouth, just so we're clear on this. This is an actual study.
Look
Uh,
at Doc Dub citing her resources. This is what you all need to do. Cite your sources. This is a this is a Trisha Cheeks PSA. Go ahead, Doc. I'm sorry. I was
You're good.
on
So
and
an
off my
anxious.
soapbox.
Hey, look, I'm always here for citing sources and telling me exactly where you found that information. I got these receipts. So your anxious attachment style is formed of an insecure attachment. So in this instance, an insecure attachment is you get particularly unnerved or uneasy when the thing that you are attached to is unavailable to you. So whether it's emotionally or physically, you start to worry, you get needy, you get clingy, you question, you are consumed with concern about this person, you feel abandoned sometimes by them. And according to research, about 19% of adults have an anxious attachment style. Our third style is avoidant. And the avoidant attachment style, this, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh because it just said avoidant attachment can look like an adult who is a lone wolf or overly self-sufficient. Self-sufficient. Um, so think of your hyper independent friend who they're fine, they seem fine without emotional support and connection, but they need it to some degree, but they also avoid it to some degree. It's like the person that says, "I don't need you around, but I want you around." And our final style is a disorganized attachment style. Now, this is the most extreme type of attachment style. A disorganized attachment can be seen as someone who behaves irrationally or unpredictably in their relationships. They will mark everything with the fear and the trauma that they have inside them. They might have deeper either physical or emotional health issues that create this sort of inner turmoil inside them where they crave close relationships but they push them away. So this one's more of like a combination of the avoidant and the anxious attachment style. They're very anxious people who want to know where you are, what you're doing, why aren't you here? I feel abandoned, come back to me. Or they're on the flip side of that, being like, oh, I didn't even know you were gone. So the reason why I wanted to focus this episode on these attachment styles was because very frequently we discuss parasocial interactions or relationships from a minor, um, simpler, broad stroked view in this community, in this space. But I wanted to make sure that we spoke about what causes that attachment, what attachment some people might be experiencing, especially when it comes to like particular VAs and how they approach them and how they defend them or how they react when they find out new things about them. So, with this, I would say, and this is just a theory in my head, this isn't backed by science, this is solely my opinion. I think a lot of people that are in this community have an anxious attachment style where they get so very needy and clingy of the person that's creating this work, or excuse me, the work that the person created, because it helped them experience something or feel something that they hadn't felt before. It helped them discover something that they hadn't known that they would be into before. And when that changes because they found out new information. They may have found out what they look like. They may have found out that this person was married. They may have found out, maybe even for some, this person's political stance. Uh, and once that information is found, they immediately want to go, I'm going to take a step away from this because I need time to process. I wasn't expecting this person to be married. I wasn't expecting this person that I made up in my head to look this way. And we've seen this happen in real time in this community, but also in the bookish community when what's her name? Britt in her books, she made a Instagram reel about don't look up the narrators of your favorite audiobook. And it wasn't like she was speaking to someone directly or a particular voice actor directly or audiobook narrator directly. She was just simply saying, you might find out something that you don't like. And that sent people off the edge because to them, she was saying, your fave voice actor, your fave audiobook narrator is hideous and you don't want to see their face. But that's not what she
Mm-hmm.
said. And then they attached that to a person that she didn't name herself or didn't call out herself. They attached it to a person, and then that person found out about it. And then in turn, you now made this person who wasn't involved in this to begin with think, oh, well, you think that I'm a hideous hunchback. When she didn't call me a hideous hunchback, she just said, don't look me up because guess what? I'm married. She said, don't look me up because I'm technically a soccer dad. So you sit in these spaces and you see people with these deep attachments, these anxious attachments to these creators, and then the illusion is broken,
Mm-hmm.
and now they feel abandoned. So I want to ask you all, what do you think is the reason many of people in these spaces, these connected spaces, because at this point Bookstagram, Book Talk, and the audio erotica realm are literally all just a giant circle. It's no longer a Venn diagram at this point.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a bunch of concentric circles. Like you were brought in here from somewhere else.
mhm.
You
So, what do
know,
you think is the The reason for that attachment.
I I think it has to do with the fact that, some people, there's something in their personal life, or rather, let me just say it like this. There is a part of them that is being neglected in their personal life that they are trying to replicate in this space or whatever fandom space that they find themselves in.
Yeah.
So, people
I
might,
agree with that.
for example, they might be in a partnership, or they might be married, and their partner might not be, attentive to all of their needs, and so they
Yeah,
turn to audios to try to find that gap, or to fill that gap. Um, and then in doing that, they become attached to this idea of the man or person that is making these audios. Um, and so there could be other things, but to me, it always seems like it leads back to something in their life that they are quote unquote missing.
yeah.
And I think that's why people say, like, oh, your feelings are validated. It's because a lot of these people in these spaces can relate to that. They can relate to um, not having that connection or that intimacy, and so they're saying, oh, I can relate to that. Your feelings are valid. But I mean, as we talked about before, that can be very dangerous.
I agree. And I think to take it a step further from like just the filling the void of what they're missing or lacking or what they feel like they're lacking in their life. It I think for me when I've gotten these kind of attachments, and thankfully I can actually talk to my partner now, but in the past it was because I couldn't communicate with this person
Hmm.
and I had to use a form of escapism to pretend like I could be happy with something.
Hmm.
And that's where my hyperfixations kick in. I've always kind of been a ride or die girl for most things I love. I love very hard. But I think that also speaks to my neurodivergency. So I got a therapist for that. So again, I want to say we're not doctors, but I do want to say that some people's brains. I know Doc Dubs kind of mentioned this earlier that you're not wired that way to cry about B2K breaking up on 106 in Park, which was an iconic point in pop culture. But some of us did cry. You know what I'm saying? My
Hmm.
sister cried. She fucking loved little B2K, although Omarion as a solo artist was solid.
Yeah.
Um I think people just grow to like say, "Oh, I feel like accomplished another thing I've learned about myself through listening or reading or absorbing this," and they kind of lose themselves in it as well. And they make it a part of their own identity.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think, and this weirdly remind. Do you remember that? I think it only had one season. It was Donald Glover's show right after he finished Atlanta, where I think it was called The Swarm. I think, but it
I
was
Yeah, it was
remember
like
that,
a
but I didn't watch it.
beehive. It was a beehive adjacent show.
Yeah, because Chloe
yeah.
Bailey was in that, I think.
Yeah.
Hmm. And the main character, she wasn't introduced to the main pop focal point in the story. She wasn't introduced to her until her and the character that's played by Chloe Bailey introduced her to her music. So she wasn't very like deep into her work. She was just like, oh yeah, whatever. Like y'all like this chick, and I don't get it. And then she finally started to listen and like her very deeply, and then it became like the focal point of her life, this person and the work that they made. And it ruined her friendships, but she didn't see it as ruining her friendships. She just thought her friend was no longer as ride or die as she was. And she was like, well, you brought me into this. You made me a fan of this. How are you now distancing yourself from me? How are you now treating me this way? And it the show was just wild to begin with. But and what everyone has said has made me think of that show because, like what Trisha said about these being concentric circles, like something brought you into this. So whether it was an ad or um, whatever these guys do on Book Talk, where they read chapters from some lady's book, and then they're like, "Oh, find me on
Thirst
this app,
trap.
find me
They
on that."
thirst
There you go.
trap.
So, and then you're
Bastards.
like, and then you're like, "Oh, okay. I thought he was the narrator of this audiobook, but he's on this other thing, so let me check him out there." So you find yourself looking for that voice because you enjoy the words that they say. And I'm not saying it in a like a condescending way. I'm just trying to figure out how to say the sound of this person's voice is what brought you to everything else that they do. And because that sound brought you in, you find yourself attaching to the voice and the work, but you wrap yourself in it in a way that you feel like you are this person's biggest fan. And being that person's biggest fan means you need to hype them up constantly. You need to defend them constantly. You need to put in so much free work for someone who may like a story, who may like a post, who may like a reel. And I think when you get so attached to that feeling of they like this last post, why didn't they like this one? The
Mhm.
last week I made this collage thingy and they liked it or they commented, but it's been months. Why aren't they still interacting with me? If you lose that interaction, then you feel like, well, why am I even putting the effort into this person? They've clearly chosen someone else over me. They liked her stories 2 days
Mhm.
ago or his stories the day before, and now you're feeling left and dropped by this person who, by any other standpoint, is trying to make money, who is a creator trying to pay a bill, a creator trying to um, get their voice out there, get their art out there, to go to some other level. And what ends up happening is because you've made that attachment and you've made that a part of your life and your personality, you woven it in so deeply that now this person has set these, to you, strict boundaries, but those boundaries don't apply to you. They apply to everyone else, not to you because you weren't the one that was crossing the line. Even though it's possible that you were the one that was crossing the line that caused them to, for the fifth time in a year, put out a new statement about, hey, this makes me uncomfortable. Again, these are my boundaries and this is what I stand on. So I
Mhm.
feel like when we, was it a month ago, 2 months ago, the amount of creators and people that were updating their pinned posts to their boundaries or saying that they were creating separate accounts for friends and family and then the work that they create so that way they can be able to live a life on social media that's not dictated by the work that they create.
Right.
And then there was people that were praising it and then other people that were trying to be Inspector Gadget, trying to figure out who it was that sent them away. And that's the other part of the parasocial relationship that needs to be discussed because now you're trying to find and dox the other person who you
Mhm.
feel is the one that sent the person that you like away from you. So it's not just the creator, it's the other people. So you're trying to find out what this person looks like, what they are like in their real life, but you're also trying to figure out who's the one that sent them away so that way I can't see their real life anymore.
And then
Yeah.
it
So,
progresses and then it inevitably snowballs into something that takes over their lives.
mhm.
And also, I just think that we've all seen, like you said, we all seen those posts from creators talking about what their boundaries are and what they're not going to accept in this space anymore. But I also think that um, we, as fans of this work or any work, we also have to have boundaries for ourselves. Um, and I think that's what the disconnect is. It's not just the artist saying, "Hey, I don't want you to do X, Y, and Z," or "I'm not going to respond to DMs," or whatever it is. You have to decide for yourself how you are going to interact with these people and what is going to be a hard limit for you. And I think people don't have that. They think anything goes um,
Mhm.
because they can hide behind anonymous accounts. Uh, when in reality, if they were to see these people face to face walking on the street, they probably would not have the
They wouldn't have the balls to
audacity.
say,
Yeah,
yeah, the
Yeah.
unmitigated gall. Audacity is a lot classier, yes.
Because honestly,
they
like,
wouldn't. Yeah,
yeah, I was gonna say, like, if I had ever had the opportunity to meet Prince, it would have been exactly like Nick and Jess on that episode of New Girl, where they just literally stared at him, and then he walked away, and then they both like screamed and passed out. That's what would have happened.
yeah, yeah.
It wouldn't have been like, I need to sit next to you and talk to you about everything that you've ever done because I think you're amazing. My mouth would have gone dry. My eyes would have gone crossed.
Hmm.
I wouldn't have even known that the man was there. I would have thought that was an
I
apparition
probably
who
would have
just
just.
walked in
I
front
would
of
have
me.
ran away. I would have just like, nope, I can't do
I,
this today.
exactly. I would have just been so flustered, like, oh,
I would have
that is
passed
Prince
out
standing in front of me.
immediately.
I wouldn't have been able to make eye contact for less than a second.
Yeah, that's why I can't go to pro wrestling shows. That's why I can't
That's
go.
yeah,
I will go,
yeah.
but
But
I
I
wouldn't
think
sit
I
front
think
row though.
I
Would you
think
sit
the
front
way that
row?
oh, I would sit front row. I'm gonna sit right behind the announcer's box, baby, or right on the side. Some would be like, I gotta holla. It's gotta be Raw though, or SmackDown. I do love SmackDown because then I can see Randy Orton. Anyway,
Yeah.
my baby was robbed. Anyway, let's continue to this.
Yes.
I was
All
just
right.
going to say that I think that it's the bicult like I think the biculture of celebrity. I think that like seeps into like spaces like this because I don't know, we're so used to, even from when we're younger, we're so used to having people to like idolize.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, not to say that celebrities, like I'm talking about like actual celebrities, not, you know,
Yeah.
not to say that we don't have like access to those people. And we'll not, like the chances of us ever running into those people is very slim, but I think in like this community where it seems so small in comparison and these people feel more accessible in comparison, I think this space is a way for people to do this. Am I making sense? It's like
No,
it's
you're
a
Yeah.
making
way.
absolute sense because the way I think about it is that I think you hit it right on the head that byproduct of celebrity. Like when you put yourself and your content out there are going to be people that criticize it, but if you have a ride or die fan that's going to stand for you no matter what, like, and that person sees you doing no wrong, whether the criticism is valid or not, because there's a thin line between healthy criticism and a hater.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be that there's some truth to that too, but I think that's the point. If you put yourself out there now, particularly in this social media world, you're automatically a micro influencer or a micro celebrity at some point. It doesn't justify the stand culture, but you also have to understand these are real people. You still don't have access to them.
Hmm. But they
To
get the
round up to
illusion
your
that they
point,
have
you
access
get
to
the
them.
illusion, but to my point earlier, and I think this is something we've talked about in our group text so much, is that these are still actors, and I think we've said
Hmm.
this on this episode as well. These are still actors. I have to respect their hustle. And at some point, we have to realize this is sex work. So why
Yep.
would I want to further disrespect clear boundaries that they've set? Not
Mm-hmm.
just from jump, but several times over the course of their career. I don't feel like
Right.
it shouldn't take that much, but I do think people cross those boundaries because, like you said, that byproduct of celebrity. If you put yourself out there, people think just because I'm a fan, I have all of the runway to know everything about you that I want to know.
Yeah. And to your point, I think that there's a bit of, or a lack of, I should say, safety and security that plenty of them probably feel in the platforms that they put their work onto. So when someone is like, how are they handling this internally? Which is a fair question to ask. Like, how are you handling removal of someone who is
I
crossing
hate
that
to
line,
I
crossing
hate
that
to
boundary?
interrupt you, but I want to
Yeah.
find her handle on TikTok. We've referenced her TikToks,
Hmm.
but I want to make sure we say her name. So keep going.
Yeah.
I want to find that while you're talking about this.
Yeah. But I was just saying that, like, how do these platforms and these places where the work goes handle when someone is being harassed or targeted in some type of, the target is not the word I'm looking for, but unknowingly placed in these types of relationships, and next thing you know, they're not putting out as much work. They either have removed
What?
themselves from social media, or they've taken a step back. I'm doing air quotes, you can't see my fingers, but they've
Mm-hmm.
taken a step back. And how internally are they also being handled? Is this person going to get removed from the site? Is this person going to have to unfortunately file a police complaint? Are they going to have to, like, how far is too far for a company then to step in and be like, look, this is too much, and we are going to handle this as professionally as possible?
Right. I think there is a lack of accountability for that kind of on certain platforms.
Mhm.
Mainly Quinn because they have the most receipts. I'm not gonna get
Yeah.
sued for that. I think that if you're not willing to hold people you've brought onto your platform accountable when they do wrong, you're just as big of a part of the problem as the people who attach themselves to. You're enabling it.
Mhm.
You're enabling. Well, if they're not going to say anything bad about it, well, it must not have been that bad. No, it's still bad, babe.
Yeah.
It's still not a good look. It's still against someone's moral code. If this person feels justifiably um, offended or abused in certain aspects of a relationship with someone they've grown in, even if it's in their own mind, I think
Mhm.
someone needs to be accountable for it if there's receipts.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just like paying people to perform badly, to behave badly and perform well. Where does the scale tip for platforms who do not want to hold their talent accountable for their bad behavior, enabling parasocial relationships? Because some of it is
Yeah.
enabled by the actual artwork. Or can
Mhm.
is this a venue to critique the artwork as well? It is very intimate.
Mhm.
Should we say, hey, stop playing with these people's emotions? Or is it directly on the person who is feeling this attachment? I mean, there's definitely a lot of responsibility to that person as well, who's become a fan and then a stan and then a little obsessive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But what responsibility is it of the creator that gives them this access to allow to grow these unwanted bonds?
Mhm.
I think there's enough accountability to go around.
Yeah.
I think, the creators have to be cognizant of what they're saying, not in like, you know, their voice work, but when they are, talking to fans through DMs or responding to comments, like what are you saying to them? Because I don't, and to be clear, I don't want to victim blame because there's nothing, to me, there's no excuse for doxing somebody. There's no
Oh,
Mhm.
excuse for
absolutely
stalking
not.
someone.
Right.
But at the same time, because this is such a sensitive space, I think that everybody has to be careful about how they are interacting with each other in this space.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think this actually leads us to our last segment, which is how do you break up if you want to?
Yeah.
If you find that you're in a space where you've, after everything we've spoken about, you've realized that there's a boundary that needs to be set. You realize you're either over consuming or you're overperforming or you are realizing you're attaching yourself in one way or another to someone's work. I'm just going to keep saying somebody's work and not the person because it does start with the work and that is what takes you into wanting to know more about the person. Um, what is it that you can do, or if you want to break up with this person and their work that they've created that has either done so much for you mentally or created a way for you to communicate that you weren't communicating before? Because there are benefits that you do get from some of these things, and I don't want to negate that
Hmm.
or say that your self discovery in this space is invalid because you've now attached yourself in a way to someone that doesn't want to be attached to.
Right.
But what you've learned about yourself is still something that you own. Like you now got those tools, but you've placed yourself in this one-sided relationship with someone that doesn't know you. What can you do to say, like, I'm going to take what I've learned here and move elsewhere and not attach myself to another person to get over this attachment? So how in this realm do you break up?
I think it starts again with honesty. I think you have to be honest with yourself about what it is that you're looking for, why you are in this space, what it is about this particular creator's work that you resonate with, what um, has it done for you, and ask yourself, well, did I do that work? Was it me that did that work, or was it the audio? Chances are it is that you did that work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're giving the credit to someone else. So I think if people were to sit and actually do inner reflection or self reflection and be honest with themselves while they're doing it instead of just getting all into their feelings, and that could be a private thing. You don't Nobody else has to know about, what you talk to yourself about, because I
Yeah.
think once you do that work, you can begin to move forward.
I agree. And I think honesty and telling yourself, you know what, there are other ways for me to find what I have here. I think people are always trying to chase a dragon, and they need
Mm-hmm.
to do that inward work. And I think I mean, just from a personal note, that's just something I've done in my own therapy is that, I constantly chasing, a high of some sort. So that serotonin boost, because it makes me happy. I can't over compensate in certain things where I need to do the work. So I think you also have to realize that you're worth doing the work for. And that
Hmm.
you don't have to find yourself or attach yourself or your identity to any kind of platform or medium or anything like that. Like, you're worth your own hype. Um, And that if you're feeling a little too close to something or you're over consuming, I think it's just like food or sex or alcohol, everything in moderation.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just really take care of yourself. That self discovery part is a part of taking care of yourself. I think we've said that self discovery part a lot. And I know that's one thing that's cited when people talk about audio erotica and its boom.
Mhm.
That, you know, it's been a part of their self discovery or awakening things they never thought they could feel again or haven't felt in a while or never felt, which, you know, I love a good testimony.
Mhm.
But I do think that, you know, you have to also do everything in moderation and take care of yourself because you can overdo it and then just get numb to it where it doesn't impact you anymore at all in a way that did move you before. That also sucks
Mhm.
if you really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's my take.
Yeah. I think that to break up with it in any way, whether it's the creator that you loved, the author that you loved, the voice actor, the narrator, whatever it is, the celebrity in and of itself, you once you start that internal reflection, I think you end up figuring out, okay, this was the emotional need or void that this person and their work filled for me. Is there a way in my personal life, in my, and I don't want to say real life because that seems a bit flippant as well, um, in your current surroundings of friends and family, or whomever it is that you spend your day to day time with, is there a way that for those people to fill that need for me? And if there is there a reason I didn't ask them to? What have I learned in a way of communicating that will help me to say to this person, hey, I've been feeling this way about this thing, and I've learned these things about myself, and I would like to ask you to help me still feel those things in a way that is sustainable for me, but also makes that you're also comfortable with fulfilling. If you're not, that's okay. But I'm just telling you that this is a thing that I felt, and I want to continue to feel it in whatever way, shape, or form I can. And I think that that's the part that a lot of people aren't asking out loud to themselves. What is it that was missing? What was it that got fulfilled? And where else can I find that? That isn't going to create a chasm in my life where I attach to something that's not tangible. And then to round that all out, at the end of this breakup, so to speak, how do you close it out? How do you thank the work that got you to this point, that got you to those things of self discovery, those things of finding your voice? Do you close it out with a letter? Do you close it out with just a general statement to yourself? Do you um, write a journal entry, whatever it might be, or do you decide this was a great interaction online? Is there a way for me to do these things in person? Like
Right.
how can you take it from just an experience online and in my mind and in my ears to something that I feel like I can potentially explore in person? And of course, with safety and care and all of that placed into it
Yeah.
as well, because you've now learned to communicate. You've also learned that from these audios, you've learned what it means for someone to actually listen to the things that you say. So you're obviously not going to go out and find some rando on the street and be like, "This is what I heard in this audio, and this is what I want done," because they won't be able to reciprocate in the way that you expect them to, because they aren't emotionally available to do that. So, which
Right.
is why I started with saying, find out what that emotional need was and redirect it, because that is your best way to move away from putting all of your time, energy, your free time and energy and dollars into something that you find now to be maybe overwhelming or no longer fulfilling or even a bit too much for you to handle. So I just encourage everyone to stay as gentle as possible with yourself, especially once you realize you're in this situation, you're getting a little bit close to this type of parasocial interaction. Um, Disengage as best you can. Um, Look for other stimuli because there's other things that you enjoy. I know that there's other things that you enjoy that give you that same hit of serotonin and dopamine and whatever amounts that you need them in. But make sure that you are being honest with yourself and not just
Hmm.
sitting in the bubble of my feelings are valid. Other people experience this, and I'm just going to stay right here. If you want to stay right there, that is fine. That is your prerogative. But if you find that that's not where you want to stay anymore, it is okay to walk away.
I
That's
also, to add on to that, something that I live by is that my fandom is my business,
Mhm.
which means to
yes.
me, at least, is the creator doesn't have to know about, how much I like the work. Like you could say, oh, I really like this book, or I like this movie, to the creator, and leave it at that. But at the end of the day, like, that, I don't have to tell them every single thing. I don't have to message them after every time I read a book or whatever it is that I'm consuming. That's not their business.
Mhm.
Um, and so, like, I think if breaking up is something that you recognize after you do the extensive inner work, if that's what you need to do, then fine. But also, there are ways that you can manage it. I don't
Mhm.
think fandom is in and of itself toxic. I think people make it toxic by stepping over that
Yeah.
line.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that people need to figure out what that line is and do the work not to cross it.
I agree. I always
Yeah.
harken back to this clip. There's a viral clip of this fan, and I can't think of his name now. He's really cute. He's got a cute nose. Um, fuck. But it was an interaction with them, and they were in New York, and he was signing, he's like, "I'm a fan of your work. Thank you for the work." And the actor was like genuinely taken back because that's all the dude said as he was signing his autograph. Like, "Thank you for your work. I appreciate the work." Um, he's in a Dolce commercial, or is it Burberry? Anyway, but it was a really genuine fan interaction. I feel like that's the most I could do if I wasn't like,
Mm-hmm.
crying like one of the old fans in a Beatles clip when they came to America.
Yeah.
Because I felt like if I was standing outside TRL and the Backstreet Boys were there, I would do that. But I was a child. You know what I mean? At some
Yeah.
point, I just want to go, get drunk with my friends and look at the Backstreet Boys in concert in Vegas. I'm not going to cry.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. And I think those types of interactions are fine. I mean, it, a few of us in this group are artists ourselves, and I know that if we ever, get to a point where loads of people are consuming our work, getting kind messages like that, especially on days when we're doubting ourselves, would be great, and very appreciated. But they're being appreciative of somebody's work and letting them know is very different than some of the interactions that we've seen happen in this space, because it can go very left. And I'd like to believe that people don't have any ill intentions, but
Mhm.
I do think that the anonymity of, the fact that people are able to be anonymous in this space, the fact that, they don't have to attach their name to the messages that they put out, gives people, makes them feel free to say and do anything they want. And that should never be the case. And we can recognize that, women uh, are, marginalized in this country, and that there are certain things that we aren't free to do with our bodies and our expression. But that doesn't mean that we can encroach on somebody else's boundaries.
Amen.
Yeah. All right. So, what are our key takeaways here as we wrap up for this episode?
One editor's note: the actor I was thinking of was Adam Driver.
Oh yeah.
Adam Driver.
Oh, I think I've seen that video.
Yeah, it's just a brother saying, I'm a fan of your work. Thank you for the work. Appreciate your art." And he's like, "Thank you, man. I appreciate that." That's a genuine fan interaction. Like, to
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Summer's point, that's all he needs to know. I like your work. Keep doing you, boo.
Mhm.
As
Just
we
keep
say
it
down
cute.
here. Just keep it 100. Keep it civil. Keep it
Mhm.
appropriate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Don't you're not I'm not look, if I see someone I'm a fan of, I'm not just gonna dry hump them in public. That's crazy. Or get his shit tattooed on me. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But that's my one editor's note. My takeaway for this is two things. Feedback is a gift. So if you see your creator getting a fair critique or some feedback from another fan, doesn't mean that they hate the creator or that you're more of a fan than they are. If your feelings are valid in that regard, so are theirs. Two, I think this is a really good time to check in with yourself and take care of yourself. It's good to have an escape. But in this day and age, everything that we consume is political. So you also
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
want to protect the spaces that you do find that release in, and make sure it is done honorably. There are a lot of good eggs in this space, but there are a lot of bad apples.
Mhm.
So don't be afraid to call out fuck shit. Please call it out, name names. It's okay if some people don't like it. Calling out bad behavior is the best way to make any space safe to me.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So I think that if there are people that really care about the space, they'll think about that first.
I think another takeaway is that we recognize that everybody wants to escape into something, but it's no longer escape if people also doesn't don't other people don't feel safe in the space that you're escaping into. It's just, at that point I had something and I lost it. But at that point it's just um you're just looking out for yourself and
Mhm.
what makes you comfortable. And to me, that's not escapism. That is just being selfish, for lack of a better
Yeah.
word. It's you're not really considering other people, and that if you look at it, that's the kind of world we live in. We live in a world where there's a lot of harm being done to people, and so if there's harm being done in the place that you're escaping to, how does that make it any different than the real world?
I agree. I think
Yeah.
my biggest takeaway, you all basically said them all already, but make sure that in what you consume, you don't sew it into yourself and into your personality. It is artwork or any type of work. It is someone's job. To some people, it's their livelihood. And I want you to be sure that you are ethically consuming these things from these people and that you are genuine in your interactions, not just with them, but the people around you, because it is okay for someone to not like what you like. It is not shaming in any way. It is not defaming or being disrespectful to you or to that creator. It is just simply a difference of opinion. And as people, we should be able to communicate differences of opinion without jumping to the immediate defense of oneself or the person that created the work. So I just want everyone to, I don't want to say be nice because be nice is very subjective. I want you to be gentle with how you speak to people in subjective situations.
I just thought of cornbread from Sinners.
I also think this is a good time to remind people, like, if you don't want to be approached with tomfoolery, don't approach other people with tomfoolery. This is a golden rule
Yeah.
And all,
moment.
yeah, and stand by what you believe in. I
10
like
toes
we said
down. Stand on
like we said
business.
what we said earlier about validation and everybody, wanting it to some extent. You not having your feelings validated is not the end of the world. You'll be okay. Somebody not agreeing with you is fine. It's okay. You don't
Mm-hmm.
need to have every single opinion that you have validated. Be okay with being the only person that thinks a certain way in a space. Learn to do that. It's an important life skill because you're not
Yeah.
going to always be around people who are going to agree with you or like the same things you like. That doesn't mean that you like what you like is wrong or that you're wrong for liking those things. It just means that you are the only one, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right. So,
We,
lastly, last little. Wait, go ahead.
no, I do want to say again, we preface all this with we're not medical experts. We're just nerds who research things thoroughly. We will have resources in our on our Substack and in our link in bio. Just click to subscribe to Lunch at the Unfriendly Black Hotties table. You can listen to this on any podcast streamer. But we did want to add on a happy note. We know we're coming up. By the time you listen to this, Pride Month will be over, but that does not mean Pride Month cannot, Pride and Pride centered content cannot be a part of your everyday life. So we wanted to end with a fun segment of another episode of the WBQC Book Club.
Yes, because I missed it last week and I was sad.
Yeah, and she added 20 more books to everyone's TBRs. So thanks, Doc.
You're
She's
welcome.
also she's not only the head librarian of the BQC. So you're actually the only black librarian of Congress right now.
Oh, nice. Well,
So
no, that's sad.
no, that is sad. It's sad because that's a good government job feels like. But you added more books to our TBR list, so we figured we'd share that with the rest of the audience.
Yes. All right, let's see. Where is my list? Yeah, there it is. Okay, so for your list, if you choose to put I think they go on everybody's list, but that's just me because I actually enjoyed like 75% of these, and some of these I haven't read, and a few I'm actually in the middle of. So we're going to start off with Ella Gets the D by Tanvia Parrott. This is a story of divorce, a woman in her 40s getting her second chance at life after her cheating husband leaves her. She moves into her best friend's house, and it turns out the best friend's brother is also going to be living in this house with her, and this man is a baseball player, and juicy things ensue. Next up, we have The Relationship Mechanic by Carmen Lee. Your car breaks down in a small town in Georgia. The incredibly beautiful mechanic decides she wants to take you around town and convince you to stay in her little itty bitty town, and you fall in love. Maybe you do. I don't know. I haven't read it yet. The
Who
Proposal,
doesn't love a nice hometown romance? It's summer. It's time for it.
and it sounds really cute. And I like small black town romances with black leads.
I agree. Same.
And then, oh, can you still hear me?
Yep, you're on.
Okay, sorry. And then we've got The Proposal by Sonora Reyes. You and your best friend have been friends for years. You live together. He has a girlfriend. You are single, and his girlfriend hates you. But to save you from a unfortunate mishap with your work visa, your best friend proposes to you. So this one I think is going to be really cute. I like the idea that this girlfriend who told her boyfriend you need to break up with your best friend gets kicked to the curb. So I just want to see how she reacts to her boyfriend now being engaged to another man. Just want to be kind of messy and figure out how that works for
Oh yeah,
them.
that does sound messy. I like
Yeah.
that.
And then obviously my favorite that I will recommend to the cows come home, Outdrawn by Deanna Gray. I think she did Rivals to Lovers very, very well with this one. These two absolutely stunning and tall. Great. Some of this is for you because they're tall, but they are gorgeous women who make these comic books, and they're trying to revive one from the 70s, but they're also rivals on a comic book webtoon esque site. And all they want is to be number one, but they know going up against each other means they might lose each other. And it's just really sweet, and it deals in family and family difficulties and traumas a little bit, but it's a good read if you are looking to feel seen in a Black Sapphic book. So these next few I have three of these next few I haven't read. So I'm just gonna give you the names and the author.
I did
But
want to just jump in and say Outdrawn was one of my favorite books I read last year. I thought
really,
it was just really well done. That was one of the first books that I was like, okay, if Doc Dub says buy it, I'm gonna buy that shit. So I did. And I thoroughly
yeah.
enjoyed it. I really did. Like I said, you're our head librarian, so
I'm so glad that every time I recommend that one, someone says that they liked it. So I'm very happy about that. So next up, we've got Ready to Score by Jodie Slaughter. Now, this one, the very lovely Miss Trisha recommended to me because
yes.
she knows I have a fascination with the WNBA.
Yes.
But this one is I'd say it's a bit of like a Rivals to Lovers again, where you return home to your town and you are competing with the high school crush of yours from back in the day for a coaching position at your local high school. Once again, sounds slightly messy because I get the feeling that the breakup was not as smooth as it could have been. But if we're dealing with a high school breakup, those are never smooth. So I'm curious to see how that one pans out.
Yeah, they never end well.
Yeah. But this next one I actually really, really enjoyed. I read it last year. It's called Boys Come First by Aaron Foley. This one is, I say it's Noah's Ark, but set in Detroit. And if you haven't,
Oh,
the Noah's Ark, the new Noah's Ark movie is actually on. This isn't an ad, by the way. It's just really good, and I want everybody to watch it. But the new Noah's Ark movie is on Paramount Plus. And I think it came out on the 20th. But it's really good, and actually, the little trigger warning disclaimer. It's kind of sad. Wasn't expecting that little bit of a twinge of sadness in there, but it's hilarious. The boys are back, and it's really funny. And the reason I say that Boys Come First by Aaron Foley reminds me of Noah's Ark is because it is that black queer man in a big city trying to two are trying to establish themselves and live the life that they want to in their hometown, and one is returning home after being fired from his job in New York, and he's just trying to build the life that he wants with these friends that he hasn't seen in a while. So it's good. It's slightly messy. So it's giving old school season one, season two Noah's Ark. Next up, we've got Kiss Me Maybe by Gabriella Gamas. This one is actually really cool because I've never read a book that featured asexual or aromantic people, or let alone an asexual woman who identifies as a lesbian. So this one was really cool to me because she accidentally comes out via a thirst trap, and now she's got all this attention online, and she decides that she wants to set up a scavenger hunt for her first kiss because she's never kissed anyone. I think she's like 27 or 28 when the book starts, and she's a librarian. And she has a crush, I should say, on the bartender at her local bar. She doesn't know that the bartender also has a crush on her. So the bartender helps her set up this scavenger hunt while sneakily trying to get all the clues so she can be the one at the end who gets this her first kiss. So it's really sweet and
That's
it's
so
kind.
fucking cute, dude.
I know, and it gives me a different look at into what asexuality is probably like for some people. So it's good representation, and they're Latinx. So there you go, double
Oh, I
representation.
love that. I love that.
Yeah,
What's the
and
backdrop of that? What's the city of that? Because that sounds intriguing.
I want to say San Antonio.
Ooh,
Yeah,
fine.
yes. And then my favorite, the one that I'm actually reading right now, is called "I'll Have What He's Having," and I don't want to butcher this
yeah.
author's name, but it's
I want to read this
Adiv
one.
Karam. So I'm 107 pages in. But this story is actually, I find it to be really unique because it's about a black man who's becoming a sommelier and a Persian man who is just down on his luck and heartbroken and They meet each other at like the weirdest kind of meet cute situation where the sommelier thinks that this man is the critic coming to critique the restaurant and the wine pairings that he works in. He's not. He just happens to be sitting at a table by himself and he's upset. Um, he literally spends like the first half of the book, the first two chapters, he's literally just crying. So he's having a little bit of a moment with himself, and they end up having a one night stand.
Mm.
The sommelier is planning to leave this Kansas City restaurant to for greener pastures because he's like, how can I be a sommelier in such a small place? But the his love interest is inheriting his family's restaurant, so he's trying to figure out how to keep this guy around while this guy is trying to be like, look, I'm not for the attachments and I'm leaving this place, so there's no reason for us to have anything more. Like I said, I'm 107 pages in and they've been getting it in since like chapter 1.
We
So,
love it when the boys get it in. Giggity.
yes.
That also
So,
sounds really good.
yeah, it's really good and I like that it's an interracial romance, but it has people in a different career than I read them to be in other books. It's usually like they're a journalist or a sports agent or they're doctors or lawyers or accountants. But a black sommelier, like I
I'm
want to
for
read
that
that.
action.
Yeah.
As a someone who also can't stand journalists, I disagree. They suck.
Yeah. And then Trisha, you added these two, Sula, excuse me, by Toni Morrison and
Yeah.
Dating Dr. Dill.
Oh yeah, I added a we I always want to add a classic. So if you want to also continue just to diversify your shelves, Sula by Toni Morrison is a good introduction to Toni Morrison's work. That's one I always like to suggest. I added two by the author Nisha Sharma, which is Dating Dr. Dill and Taste Like Shakar. And they are Shakespeare retellings. One is Taming of the Shrew. The other is it's another comedy with a chick. Taming of the Shrew and as you not as you like it. Anyway, I'll put that in the notes. But yeah, those are two I added.
But I've definitely seen Dating Dr. Dill around, so that's one that I definitely want to get into, and I need to expand my Toni Morrison collection, so I'll add that one in there too.
So do I. I have a I was on a kick last fall, so I have a couple.
And then this last one is The Great Man by Kira Davis Lowry. Now, this one is a Great Gatsby retelling. It is set in Los Angeles after World War II. Our main character comes home, well, not necessarily home, but he comes back to LA to be with his cousin who is going to help him find a job and a home in LA to be among the new black elite in the area. And he meets this Gatsby like figure who takes him under his wing, but is also very mysterious. Like this is one I've been actually listening to on audio, and the narrator's voice is incredible. But it's really good because you get these glimpses of historical fiction because at this point they are fighting against they're fighting to keep their neighborhood, the Sugar Hill of Los Angeles. They're fighting to keep their space. So you get glimpses of Lena Horne and Hattie McDaniel, who also live in this neighborhood. You see activists and civil rights leaders on their way on their come up from either moving from the south to the west, trying to build this life of black excellence in LA. And this Gatsby like figure is right at the center. And it's really, really well done. It's really well researched. And it's definitely one, if you like historical fiction that's set in like, if you've read anything like A Love Song for Ricky Wilde or um, what's the other one? Do What Godmother Says, or something like that, where it's set in like a really historical time, whether it's the Jazz Age or post World War II, where there's just this boom of black entrepreneurship, black education. This is actually a really good one for you to read because you'll get more historical context of like eminent domain and
Oh yeah.
how the HOAs and redlining did certain things to certain neighborhoods. So it's really, really good. So that's another one that's not necessarily a romance, but if you liked F. Scott Fitzgerald in any way, shape, or form, this is a retelling I'd recommend.
The cover is absolutely gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
Just looking up the synopsis now so I can add this to our book list that will also be on our Substack when this episode drops. So go check that out. But the cover is absolutely gorgeous. It is post World War II. It's kind of giving um, Harlem Renaissance in LA,
Mm-hmm.
but in the Sugar Hill area. And the I love a historical fiction as long as they get it right. I hate when they butcher it just for shits and
Yeah.
giggles. I love that.
And
That's a great list.
yeah, so that is it for your. I don't apologize for increasing your TBR. At this point, I've stopped apologizing for it. But pick up whichever books you want. Look. I do things over here. I read, and if I think somebody will like it, I'm gonna tell you about it every single day until you pick it up.
See, this is what we call in the game good influencing. Good peer pressure. This is what the late Representative John Lewis called good trouble.
Yes, good trouble with
Now,
good books that
if
are
only I
diverse
can
and
get
mixed.
if I can get years added onto my life so that I can have time to read all of these books.
I mean, I think one day we'll be, we'll find we'll be like Regine at the end of Living Single. Will they finally get her billionaire and he's amazing?
Mhm.
I feel like that's gonna happen. Mine's just gonna be
Yeah.
Scottish.
We just got to get you to Scotland.
All right. Thanks everybody. What a great episode. Thank you
Thanks.
to Summer and Doc Dubs. Doc Dubs led this episode, so shout out to all of her hard work. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Snaps. Um Don't forget to follow us on all of the platforms. The link is in our bio. And if you are listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Pocket or anything like that, click to subscribe so you know when new episodes drop. Also on YouTube. And also follow us on Instagram and Blue Sky or Blue Ski, whatever the fuck they're calling it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.